We're Group A11, and our names are Connor Black, Drake Hughes, Brian Caslow, Gina Hugh, and Leslie Joy. In this presentation, we will discuss evolutionary cascade and its impacts on ecosystem functions. Regulatory functions, habitat functions, production functions, and information functions are all responsible for the success and identity of an ecosystem. Our group will cover specifically the changes in habitat, production, and regulatory functions present in the experiment in the article titled "A Cascade of Evolutionary Change Alters Consumer Resource Dynamics and Ecosystem Function." Regulatory functions regard the capacity of an ecosystem to regulate essential ecological processes necessary for the support of life. Habitat functions are factors that influence an ecosystem's ability to provide refuge for organisms as well as reproductive opportunities, preserving genetic diversity. Production functions describe the uptake of inorganic molecules and nutrients by autotrophs, which produce oxygen and carbohydrates. Ecosystem function and evolutionary cascade ties into what we have been learning in class so far: community ecology, ecosystem dynamics, speciation, and life cycles. Evolutionary cascade describes the differential impact caused by the evolution of one or multiple organisms within an ecosystem, which correlates to community ecology. Community ecology is the study of how the interactions of all organisms affect the entire community. The article highlights the effects of the evolution of an upper trophic level organism population, which gives rise to changes in lower organisms, eventually affecting the primary producers and ultimately resulting in the change of the entire ecosystem.
In our article, the study consisted of alewives, which are fish that consume the daphnia, which are also known as zooplankton, and the phytoplankton. The objective of this experiment was to determine the impact of the specific evolution on the entire ecosystem and how they differ from other ecosystems with similar organisms and physical characteristics such as lake depth. Predation was the main factor behind the evolution of the ecosystem that contained the anadromous alewives. This figure shows how each organism affects each other, which in turn affects the entire ecosystem function. The alewives consume the zooplankton, which causes the divergence between the anadromous and landlocked alewives. When the zooplankton are consumed, this affects the population of the phytoplankton, which in turn alters the ecosystem function. This picture shows the basic food chain of a marine environment. The researchers wanted to quantify the impact of alewives and subsequently daphnia or zooplankton on phytoplankton populations, which in turn affects oxygen production and other facets of the ecosystem both above and below water.
Two different types of alewives were tested: anadromous alewives, which migrate from the saline environments to freshwater lakes in March and May. They then remain in lakes for about 6 months before returning to the ocean. Landlocked alewives, which are unable to migrate and therefore live in lakes year-round. Anadromous alewives are larger and target larger prey than landlocked alewives. 3 ecosystems were viewed: lakes with anadromous alewives present, those with only landlocked alewives, and as a control, lakes devoid of alewives. For this experiment, observations were made in each of these natural environments as well as in a laboratory recreation. Natural environments and recreated laboratory environments yielded similar results. Daphnia populations which serve as prey for alewives differ between the two ecosystems. The daphnia in contact with the anadromous alewives matured faster and reproduced more frequently than the daphnia in the landlocked lakes, therefore having a greater fitness, but both types of daphnia grew to be the same size.
These daphnia had an exponential growth rate that was 23% higher than the daphnia with the landlocked alewives present, and 28% faster than the daphnia in lakes with no alewives. For the growth period from fall to spring, which is when the populations of daphnia reach their highest, they take advantage of the alewives' absence in the anadromous lakes. The life cycle of these daphnia has severely been altered by the alewives, and thus the daphnia with the anadromous alewives have a higher fitness than daphnia in the other two environments. This also has an impact on the phytoplankton densities in these ecosystems, where the phytoplankton actually decline at rates much faster in the lakes with the anadromous alewives than in the other ecosystems. The problem with this is when the Daphnia populations decrease, there is no significant increase in algal densities. Therefore, oxygen levels are directly proportional to the amount of phytoplankton, which in turn does affect the entire ecosystem.
So, the speciation of an organism can change the life cycle of another, and the life cycle affects the dynamics of an entire ecosystem. Since the alewives in landlocked lakes and anadomous alewives live in separate environments, the anadomous alewives have evolved separately while the landlocked alewives remain the same. The anadomous alewives with larger mouths had a greater fitness, causing the population to evolve into more alewives having larger mouths. This speciation event had repercussions for the life cycle of Daphnia population, resulting in speciation among Daphnia. Those in contact with anadomous alewives that reach maturity more quickly and reproduce more often had a greater fitness. This divergent impact of Daphnia affected phytoplankton abundance, which altered oxygen production, fundamentally changing the makeup of the ecosystem, specifically the carrying capacity and production of oxygen, as well as the conversion of inorganic sources like CO2 and water into energy for the other organisms in the ecosystem. As we have seen in class, species adapt and evolve based on interaction with their ecosystems. In other words, ecology shapes evolution. Conversely, the research work has shown that the opposite also holds true. Various species living in a specific ecosystem can influence that particular ecosystem. Indeed, the divergence in alewives has direct effects on community and ecosystem processes, which in turn drives life history, evolution in Daphnia. In conclusion, evolution cannot be ignored when studying ecological interactions.